Time to see how that raised dome was built. After that, I had already decided that I'm going to build this double hotel alt build designed by Elite Longbowman 7. I stumbled upon this other hotel alt build designed by Fanpeixi. This version looked more interesting. Especially that raised dome caught my eye. And this building even had some architectural designs on the backside of it, too. But then again, it had a couple of features that I wasn't quite sure of. In this build, the extension is a separate building, so it wouldn't be that big in size. And I really didn't like how the third floors were connected at the top. But I must admit that I seriously considered picking this version instead. But then I realized that this version doesn't have that great connectivity with the police station that was in the other alt build. And that was the main reason why I had chosen that one in the first place. But I would be interested to know, which one would have you chosen? This version? Or this version? You can write down in the comments which one would have been your choice, and why. But let's get back to the raised dome. Later on, I realized that you can buy the instructions for that separately. So, that is what I decided to do. Do the Elite Longbowman 7th version, but with the Fanpeixi raised dome. Or rather, a version of it. Because I guess that I would have quite a lot of extra parts after that double alt build, and perhaps I could use those to build a version of that raised dome without need for any extra parts. While building the hotel, I noticed that these two half-circle plates that were needed for the raised dome were already used in the build, and that was a bit of a problem. But those parts were not used in a critical way. They were only used as a support plates under the third floor structure. But surely, there are multiple ways you can build that support without using those parts. And this is the reason why I told the human helpers to build all the floor sections first while we were building the hotel previously. I needed to see which speaker plates were available when those floor sections were built, so I could get these half circles replaced. And in the end, I managed to do just that. The half circles are out. And I just used different plates here. And I couldn't find a place for this corner plate. I didn't need it for the dome, but I couldn't find a place for it in the new support work either. And here you can see a detailed picture of how I did that new support work. If you compare this image to the original instructions, I'm pretty sure you can replicate this one. But then again, this is just one idea. There are countless other ways to do this. One other problem that I needed to solve was the fact that I only had one of these smaller windows. And I needed 4 of those for the dome, so I needed to find 3 more. Easiest place to get more of those were these back windows in the third floor. Originally, those were built using these smaller windows. Those were the better choice in my mind, but I can live with this change, because it gave me enough of those smaller windows. So, these were the parts that I took out by modifying the original build. With these crucial parts available, I hope to build the raised dome. The next problem was that I didn't have the right parts for the bottom layer here. So I decided to skip it and get a temporary base and start building from these pillars upwards. There would be little point of coming up with an alternative way to build that first layer of bricks if I couldn't build the rest of the tower. So I chose this brown circle for a temporary base and started building. This step is kind of a step 8 of the dome instructions. And I only needed to do a couple of color swaps, and I could make this build. That wall board between the pillars was originally green, but now it's white. And these tiles directly on top of the pillars were originally white, but now they're green. I think this still works because it's still all green and white used there. And here you can see how this build looks at this point. I think the white behind the pillars actually works quite well, because white is also used in the third floor windows behind the same pillars. But I still think that it definitely needs that one layer of bricks there at the bottom, because now the windows in a way go to the floor. But at least everything else is now built, so I can concentrate on that final thing. The biggest problem with that layer is that I only have one pair of these parts. Also, I don't have any of these slopes available. But I do have enough of these inverted versions of those curved pieces. I just need to come up with a way how to connect those to these snot pieces. Basically, this is all about how to connect studs against studs. Looking at the available parts, I remembered one method that was used in the police station. These jumper plates are basically snot mounted, but they are also inverted. That was done by using these round pieces and then basically anything that has holes in it, like these rounded 1x2s. So, this is one way of doing it. After some test building, I realized that I don't actually need those rounded 1x2s because the snot bricks already have holes in them. And I could use those to create the connection like this. After a couple of iterations, I ended up with this piece. It's basically just these 5 parts connected to this snot brick and plate. And this is how it looks once it is placed. It will be slightly wider than the tiles below, but I think it's still going to work. And here you can see all 4 of those placed. The next problem was how to fill this gap by starting from that one stud that was in that corner. I had the idea of using these rounded elements with that bar on the side. The rounded shape gave me the opportunity to come out of that corner in a 45-degree angle. This was my first idea of that assembly. But that bar element wasn't long enough, so that tile didn't come out as far as I needed it to come. Of course, I could add more 1x1s on top of that white piece over there. But this whole assembly was quite flimsy, and there was nothing preventing that tile piece rotating if I happened to touch that piece once the building was complete. The next idea was to use this headlight brick because it had that lip that prevented the tile from rotating. That headlight brick could also rest on top of the tile, even though it wasn't connected. So in that way, the build was less flimsy. Then, pretty much by accident, I realized that I could use this stud on top of the headlight brick to attach this curved tile, because I needed something to cover the top side also. That meant that the 1x2 on the side was slightly too prone, but I just decided that it is an architectural feature. And this is how the completed corner piece actually looks like. Definitely not something that I had in mind when I started, but after several iterations, this is the one that I came up with. Unfortunately, I only had 2 of those curved tile pieces in green. So at this point I used a couple of whites just to keep the build going on. While test fitting, I realized that I could just keep the temporary base that I had used while building the dome, because that circle plate was just of perfect size to go between those curved tiles. And because those curved tiles covered the edges of that plate, you couldn't see that it wasn't of correct color. So, at this point, I was very happy. I had managed to build my own version of that dome, and it looked great. The last thing to solve was these two white curved plates. The original set comes with 6 of those. So, because I have 2 sets, I should have 12 of those in total. I could find 4 in this dome build, 4 on top of this roof, and 2 were used in these corner pieces. So there had to be still 2 more that were part of the original build. With a bit of searching, I found them. They're right here. Replacing those with white ones would be an easy solution. And perhaps those smaller ones at the back would need to be replaced too with white ones. Like this. Let's see if this works. And, well, it kind of works, but I think that white layer there is too distracting. So, I needed to come up with a new plan. I couldn't replace these ones at the top of the dome. Those are just too visible. And same goes for the ones at this layer, as we can already see. And I had already decided that these ones must be green also. So the only ones that I'm left with are these ones on top of the roof. Perhaps I could replace 2 of those. The ones at the back would make more sense. Okay, I know that this looks a bit silly, but actually this is going to work. Because once you add all these pieces in, those are going to cover all that funky plate work pretty much entirely. See, you cannot see anything on this side. And it looks good from this side also. At this point I also noticed that because the base is actually bulkier than just the dome that was there before, the snake piece doesn't actually fit here perfectly. So starting with a bar element could be a better idea. And perhaps this corner here could also look better. So let's rebuild this railing. And now it starts from the bar element. And this corner actually looks better this way also, because it's symmetrical. And now it's all done, and I think it looks just great. Looking at it, I realized that I had made one change, but I forgot to mention about it. I couldn't build these flowers on this side of the tower, because my version of the tower base is bulkier than the original. But I think the tower looks great, even if it has the same flowers in each window. So, that is how I managed to build that raised dome by just using the leftover parts from the double alt build. Or almost, at least. I did have to do a couple of part swaps with the original build to get together all the parts that I would need to complete this build. But nothing major was needed. But now I think it is time to wrap this video up. The video should be detailed enough for you to build your own version of that build, if you so choose. In the next video, we will do some further modifications for this hotel. If you want to see that video as soon as it is out, you should consider hitting that subscribe button down there. I'll release the next video ASAP, but remember, when a Sloth says that, it means as slowly as possible. Bye bye.